It's the fabulous Rollomatic Mop and Waxer with this built-in remote control wringer and a sponge rubber head that always stays soft and absorbent. Watch how it quickly soaks up water. And for wringing, just flip the lever. The rollers do all the work. No more bending or stooping, and your hands never touch the water. And the Rollomatic mop won't drip, so it's perfect for washing walls, ceilings, and windows. The absorbent sponge rubber head easily picks up the messiest spills, spreads liquid wax evenly and thinly without streaking. So get the Rollomatic today. It's the easiest, most convenient mop and waxer you've ever used. If you don't agree, simply return it to manufacturer for full refund.
The Rollomatic Mop and Waxer, an ideal gift. Available at Target. This is the 6 p.m. edition of NewsCenter 11 for March 8th, 1979. With anchorman Jim Dyer, Glenn Burns with the weather, Bob Kurtz on sports, and the NewsCenter 11 reporting team.
Good evening. Inflation took another big bite out of the consumer pocketbook last month. Wholesale prices rose 1% in February, and that's the second straight month that prices have gone up that much. With a report on what's happening to your local supermarket, here's Sally Fitz.
Paying a lot for groceries, we'll get ready to pay more. Food prices went up 1.6% in February. In January, this market basket full of basic food items cost you $15.93. Now it costs $16.17. The biggest increases this month were in vegetables, pork, sugar, fruit, and fish. Believe it or not, the increase in the price of beef and veal slowed down from a 14% increase in January to about 5% in February. Have you noticed food prices going up,
Yes.
especially in the past couple of months?
Yes.
How have you coped with that problem? How has it affected your lifestyle?
Not bought as many meats. Stayed with hamburgers and roasts. Just doing without some things that I would normally buy.
Consumers are cutting down in many areas, but not in convenience foods, which are more expensive. The manager of this store says those sales have doubled in the past year or so. It'll be interesting to see just how many of us will continue to buy convenience foods with price increases of 1.8, 1.6% a month. Those are going to translate into a total annual increase of 21% in the price of food. That's more than most of us are going to make in pay increases this year. Sally Fitz, NewsCenter 11.
And with consumer prices skyrocketing, jet fuel is in short supply, but there's still one group of pilots who can get their hands on gas if they can find the way to pay for it. Jim Gately explains.
There are more than 5,000 private planes in Minnesota, but owners can still buy gas. It's just the price is going up. In recent months, companies like Shell and Phillips have gone up 1 to 2 cents per gallon, and it's likely to get worse.
They tell us it's going to be rising in the next few weeks. We have no idea at this time how much it'll be going up.
But the owners of these planes are probably glad because at least the fuel is available. But that also could change. However, precautions are being taken.
We're going to rent storage tanks to protect us for the purpose of having the fuel when we need it. We'll be buying our fuel, we'll say today, for the next 2 weeks to know exactly where we are at all times.
Gas for these smaller planes sells for just under $1 a gallon. That's expensive compared to automobile gas, but of course these planes get pretty good mileage, there's less traffic, and no 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. Jim Gately, NewsCenter 11.
Metropolitan Transit Commission and other bus lines may soon join the fight for fuel. MTC has already seen its allocation cut by 20%. Jeanette Harrison has the story.
MTC officials told me today that the additional 20% would be supplied by fuel set aside by the State Energy Agency. But at the agency, they had a different story to tell.
We're working with MTC, and we hope to be able to come up and take care of a lot of the shortfall that they will be experiencing. Whether we'll be able to do that or not remains to be seen. We're going to give it our best shot.
Business says the state is still working on the set-aside program, and at most only 5 million gallons will be available to be shared by hardship cases, a small percentage when compared to overall fuel needs. But MTC won't be the only line caught in the fuel squeeze. Business says many private bus lines will soon be feeling the pinch, although in a random survey this morning, spokesmen for almost every line insisted they had no problems.
They may not have heard it, or they may have refused to believe it, but so far as we know that these company-imposed allocations, the ones like MTC has, they're going across the board.
State officials say that in times like this, everyone wants to know what's going to happen. But they say about the only thing that they're certain of is that the future is uncertain. For NewsCenter 11, I'm Jeanette Harrison.
And meanwhile, at the state capitol, legislators were issuing an energy warning to all Minnesotans. The lawmakers say we can no longer afford to maintain our present lifestyle without running a great risk of exhausting our existing energy sources. Minnesota's oil and natural gas come from out-of-state sources, and we're told we need a special approach.
We have to some degree, rely on other sources. But simultaneously, we can do a lot internally in terms of cutting down our use of that supply, and that's why heavy emphasis is on conservation. Now, there is no gargantuan, simple answer to it. It's got to be piecemeal efforts because the energy picture is very complex.
Yesterday, Stan Borman reported on the fact that certain state legislators can retire at the end of 1980 at nearly twice the amount of money they received as total pay last year. Well, today, Borman talked with one of those lawmakers and is here with the story. Stan?
Well, Jim, Mr. Rod Searle, the Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, is 58 years old and a 22-year veteran of the state legislature. Last year, state lawmakers were receiving an annual salary of $8,400. Under the current state retirement law, however, if Searle wanted to quit his job next year, he would receive a yearly retirement check of almost $14,000 a year for the rest of his life. I asked the Speaker today how he feels about this sudden windfall.
That it would have been possible for me, that I was going to run one more time and then just sink into a big cushy retirement and fade out. That's not the way I do business.
I understand that, sir.
Okay.
But just taking it as a case in point that there are, in fact, I believe, 4 members of the state legislature, of the Minnesota House of Representatives.
Under that very intricate piece of legislation that says, in effect, we want you out of here, we'll give you a nice retirement if you'll leave.
And essentially, you can retire for more money that we paid you for the past 12 years, essentially is what it is. Do you think that that's fair, sir? Now, not taking personalities out of this.
Not really, it isn't. Not for the amount of money that I've paid in. We've been paying in at the rate of 8% of our salary since 1960-something.
And the rest of the money comes from the general fund.
That's correct.
Which is supported by our taxes.
That is correct.
I asked Mr. Searle today if he thought it was fair. Searle says even though the benefits are legal, he wants to change the law. He says the taxpayer has been gouged long enough. Jim?
Thank you, Stan. Meanwhile, in the House, members overwhelmingly voted to cut their own expense money. Presently, the lawmakers automatically receive $48 per day. However, under the change, that figure will be cut to $17 for metropolitan legislators and $27 a day for outstaters. Well, they finally started that controversial Howe chemical cleanup. We'll have that story and more when NewsCenter 11 continues.
Clean beans, healthy beans, as far as you can see. That's the way you grow them now, 'cause Tollban sets you free. Tollban has the tolerance that lets you use it right. You're free to spray the rate you need, keep grasses out of sight. It's the grass control you've always wanted. Tollban tolerance sets you free.
Before you spend one nickel on a mid-size car, compare Olds Cutlass Supreme. Compare Cutlass Comfort. Experience the ride of Cutlass full-frame construction. Compare economy. EPA ratings indicate Cutlass offers the best gas mileage of any V8 with its available 4.3-liter engine, and even better mileage with the available diesel V8. Styling, price, resale value. Compare Cutlass, America's best-selling mid-size car the last 4 years.
Compare Olds now. See your Metroland area Olds dealer today.
Disking in Treflan. Now, what about broadleaves? Add Amoben herbicide. Amoben Treflan beats both broadleaves and grasses. Broadcasting lasso. Now, what about broadleaves? Add Amoben herbicide. Amoben lasso beats both broadleaves and grasses. With Treflan or Lasso, Amaben won't brown beans.
It's Super Sale at Menards, your millwork headquarters. We always have a huge selection of doors and windows, every size you'd ever need. Now during Super Sale, you can save big money on Anderson PermaShield windows and doors. This Anderson PermaShield 2 patio door, only $369.99. It operates easily and is equipped with double pane insulating glass. A super deal, a 6 by 6 foot 8-inch sliding door for $369.99 at Menards.
You save big money when you shop Menards.
Well, the cleanup of the chemical waste from the Howe Fertilizer Company fire finally began today. Joe Casella is here in the studio with that report. Joe?
Jim, a little less than half of the contaminated materials were trucked to the Jim Robertson farm near Huntley today. The material is being deposited in a specially prepared plastic-lined trench where it will be stored until it melts. Then it will be sprayed on Robertson's crop. Since the fire, Howe officials have taken a no-comment stand on the disposal issue, but company officials who asked not to be identified told me late today that the entire disposal issue is being blown way out of proportion by the state and the news media, that the chemicals are used by millions of farmers every spring in concentrations much stronger than what's found in the contaminated ice and snow. We have quite a story to tell about this incident, one official said, but unfortunately for political and other reasons, it can't be told until after the disposal is completed. Cleanup continues tomorrow. Disposal costs are estimated at about $100,000, and at this point it's not known if the state or Howe will pick up the tab. Jim?
Thank you, Joe. There was a fatal shooting in the 1000 block today of DuPont Avenue North late this afternoon. The coroner's office is withholding the name of the dead woman until certain members of her family can be located. But shortly after the shooting, a 45-year-old man was taken into custody at his home and a gun was recovered. Police say it's believed that man is a relative of the dead woman. 30-year-old Russell Olstead of Minneapolis was robbed and kidnapped early this morning when he stopped to help two men with car trouble. Olstead escaped after several hours in the trunk of his automobile, and police are still looking for the car and for the kidnappers. And a U.S. attorney wants another hearing on an appeal that overturned the conviction of two men in the Piper kidnapping case. 3 youths have been killed street gang style, allegedly as a result of gangs seeing the movie The Warriors. And a congressional commission has set Monday to begin a study into spectator violence. NewsCenter 11 movie critic Nancy Nelson saw that movie, The Warriors, and she's here to tell us about it.
Jim, Paramount Pictures, the producer of the film, has been very quiet since all that trouble began, not wanting even to release clips of the film. This is clearly a case where the producer has to accept responsibility for his product. The Warriors is a terrible movie about street gangs in New York City and their violence toward one another. Though the phenomenon of street gangs is real and distressing, in this peculiar distortion of reality, only other gangs exist. No average people, no one you and I would recognize. The Big Apple is just rotten to the core. The premise is that a convention of street gangs is called. The main spokesman is shot and killed, and the wrong gang, the Warriors, is accused of the killing. All gangs are alerted to find and kill the Warriors, and so they begin their fight back home to Coney Island. The real concern here is the message of the movie. We're living in a violent era. Paramount knows that, and they made a violent film hoping it would feed on those interests and make money. It has. To date, the film has grossed over $12 million. Paramount Pictures has presented us with a gang, set them up as role models, tough guys who can beat anybody, and then, with their story, suggest that we consider the Warriors the winners, the good guys at the end. The movie is rated R. That probably stands for repulsive. It's called The Warriors, and I suggest you miss it. Jim?
Thank you, Nancy. Minneapolis city officials today called upon Congress to reenact the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. Now, what that law does is force banks and savings and loans institutions to tell where and how much they've made in home loans. We get more from Bernie Grace.
Many banks are against the Mortgage Disclosure Act, claiming it costs them millions of dollars to comply with, and they say only a relatively small number of people have ever asked for the information. The Minneapolis Council Majority Leader, Judy Carrero, along with some neighborhood groups, say the act should be renewed by Congress because the information is a good planning tool, a guide where the city should spend its money. Without the act, Carrero says banks won't make loans in the less desirable neighborhoods.
What they do is they take the money and they put it into the suburbs, and they don't put it in the city. And with this tough anti-redlining ordinance, we are able to take both private investment and public investment and aggressively use it